It's the third year, and every year has a flavour and texture. And I was struck by the theme of the International Nurses' Day, which was Nurses, a Voice to Lead, with health as a human right. So that became the springboard for me thinking that the voice, a singing voice, would be something I'd love to bring into the art of caring. It all starts with Alban, who gets the ball rolling with artists contributing work that becomes a postcard.
So the aphorisms, the haikus, is that every year we've got new faces coming and new people being really excited about the show. We've been doing it 4 years, and each year there's less truly open exhibitions that support anyone, that accept anyone's work, that is free for people to view. They're very, very rare, these exhibitions, and so it's really important that ours keeps them going and flourishes. I don't choose the work to go into the St Pancras show, that's all Elaine and Peter. Earlier on in the St George's show, that is totally inclusive.
I always go to St George's to see the display of work, and from there we spend several sessions identifying work that may potentially be what we want to display the originals of in the gallery.
And I think without the art of caring, if I could use it in that broadest sense, the NHS means nothing. I think this is a fantastic opportunity, Peter, to celebrate the NHS and the art of caring.
The one picture, the little picture that grasped me, and I didn't know this at the time, was a little picture called Love and Care for All of a mermaid. And I actually found out that that picture is drawn by the youngest person in the exhibition, a 12-year-old child drew that. And I did think that was really beautiful, because it was so caring, it was magical, it was caring.
So there's two prizes. There's one for the artwork and one for the best aphorism.
Thanks. Thank you very, very much. And the proudest thing for me though is that I'm Lily. That's the mermaid drawer's uncle.
You know, everything, but just a little bit of glitter in there is just a little bit of bling. It's lovely.
They look like they're caring for each other a lot, and with care comes love. It's seeing as they're a fantasy creature and they're still caring for each other, it shows how much a real creature like us can care for each other.
No, I told Lily I've done quite a few shows with Alban Low now, and this is, I think, the third Art of Caring show that I've done. The painting is called Say No to Hidden Suffering, and I wanted to combine the feeling of a person that was partly hidden, and that person could be the person that was suffering, or could be that kind of spectre of hidden suffering that could affect us all. I paint people a lot, but I don't paint their faces. I have facial blindness, prosopagnosia, and so the shape of the body is the thing that's most important to me. And I felt that I could get the feeling of this looming or scared, depending on your viewpoint, better by having an outline or a silhouette than by having a more detailed face. After painting the entire figure, I then dragged down with a squeegee, because I liked the fact that you had the half seen, half not seen, possibly hidden, to leave the viewer to do that work themselves, to see how they wanted to interpret it. And I also like the fact that you get one go to do it. You can't tell exactly how it's going to look.
Something inside so strong, I know that I can make it.
I lived in Istanbul for about 12 years. I was married to a Turkish woman, and I enjoyed the city's energy, and I started to do a small zine which was in black and white, lots of intense drawings of city life, sometimes portraying young people or secular people or religious people. And Istanbul is a very dynamic and crowded city, but also has a mix of poor and rich people, and the contrasts are more apparent than in London. We've got a really good studio and very good, supportive and kind environment to explore artistic ideas. I come twice a week and it's a lifesaver. You get compassion, and there's a lack of that in the wider society, because if you're ill or disabled you can't really earn money. You haven't got much money, so you get cast aside. These are about city life and the pressure it puts on people, but there's also a lot of energy and it's a slightly different approach. We use bright colours with coloured felt tip pens to get a different effect. And it's great that the hospital is using some of its space to support people who might have been there. I like to return there in a more positive frame of mind.
We were thrilled that there was enough work to structure into linked colours or ideas. This major wall with work to do with the sun, the heart, the cutouts.
I was recovering from breast cancer, and the hospital that I went to was Bart's in London, and I used to look at the fountain, a beautiful Italianate fountain. So I suddenly, quite intuitively, started to use gold and silver, and I didn't know that I was going to, but I made a whole series of healing hearts. But I work on handmade Japanese silk paper, so that again there's this lovely lightness but also a sense of intrinsic beauty. So you're using tiny little bits of silver leaf and you're building up a surface, you're building up a design. And as I was doing that, in a way, I was healing myself. I was like piecing myself together. So some of the hearts initially, they're all in different shapes and sizes, but my desire was to create a series of healing hearts that represented, for different people, different, you could say, different forms of healing. This poem by Daisaku Ikeda further enhances and explains the work. From a healed and peaceful heart, humility is born. From humility, a willingness to listen to others is born. From a willingness to listen to others, mutual understanding is born, and from mutual understanding, a peaceful society is born. Non-violence is the greatest act of humility. It's an act of courage.
I was in Australia at the beginning of the year, and when my husband Michael was outside the major gallery in Melbourne, while I was taking photographs, a little girl, she was on the other side of the window with water, and she put her hand out, and I thought, oh, what a beautiful connection of between people who, you know, don't even know each other. And then in the gallery, I was absolutely amazed by this rather monumental piece of work, which involved the sleeping Buddha. To me, caring is making connections where there are often boundaries and borders. I thought, well, a generic image we could use to give the art of caring this year a certain identity. I'm pleased with it because I think it does tap into this concept of caring that crosses boundaries of religion and culture.
I've always loved paper and stationery. It's something that I've always collected and had a kind of a connection with.
So I was doing greetings cards and I decided to try and make them more 3D, so I basically cut into them And that's where it started, and then I started doing larger pieces. And it's not an easy thing to do. With a piece like these that you see, I have to stop and start. I have to let my fingers rest. I really want to exhibit cutouts in a three-dimensional way. To have depth, I want it to have shadow, I want it to really show the sort of the delicacy and the intricacy, because I think that's really part of its beauty, part of its fragility. With hearts, it's such a positive symbol.
And it's always been something quite attractive to me as well, visually. And yet in my work, there's always kind of a darker side to it as well. There's always a link to suffering, which I think should be acknowledged at the same time, that everything isn't just lovely and everything isn't just pretty and beautiful, that there is a darker side to life, there is pain. Now I always, in every piece that I make, try to join the two and try to express both sides, because I think one cannot exist without the other.
I think St Pancras show is really exciting because you meet face to face the artists, and I was particularly taken this year by the group of artists from Stacey Street. They just love being part of the exhibition, and that pure pleasure when you see your work on the wall for the first time, I think that's an exhilarating moment.
I wrote a picture of my son like that with his eyes shut.
It's called Politics and Health. Initially, I wanted to do something that linked in with the International Nurses' Day theme for this year, which is a voice to lead, and health is a human right. And I really pondered about what I would make to fit in with that theme, which is quite dry and corporate. And I did a little bit of research and came across the Director General's quote that health is a human right, irrespective of race, religion, economic or social factors. Then I looked at what was actually happening in the world, and whilst we've got the Director General making this statement about health being a human right, when we look across the world, it's not necessarily the case. In America, health may well be a human right, but because it has to be paid for through insurance, it stands to reason that health care may be well linked to wealth. I love portraits. I love creating portraits in different mediums, whether that's pencil drawing, oil painting, acrylic painting. I like to reuse materials, and I had board that was used for packaging previously. I've never actually used pencil on board, and I wanted to experience how that would be. And I thought, in terms of politics, I didn't want a pretty picture.
We were looking to reach out to the wider community around St Pancras. I got in touch with the occupational therapy team, and they introduced me to Robert Low, who runs this brilliant tennis group down here at Islington Tennis Court. And I sketched Robert himself, and he obviously runs the group, and his says vibrant, and it sums him up. We've got these feelings of each player and what they sort of represented. So this one says up, beat, happy, positive. So they're all things that I felt when I watched them play. And most of the time I'm spent around London in dark clubs sketching musicians. Often the pen never leaves the paper, so it's kind of one continuous line moving about, and that's why it has that sense of movement. Wimbledon was on, and Peter, he always wants to make people think. He wants to make people to look twice at the artwork. So we worked together on making something that will really catch people's eyes, to give that sort of sense of animation that are in the drawings as well.
It's one of the delights of this gallery space. It changes from an interior area with artificial lighting. Then you move into the other gallery where it's lit by natural lighting, which means we have issues with reflections on glass or non-glass displays. So that enables us to be creative and inventive in a gallery space that's got a lot of character. Some people are quite sensitive, and I feel that life and art are very holistic. That you shouldn't really separate the two. In this particular case, Art of Caring, there is some work to do with sexuality and death, and so we've placed it in an area that feels like possibly a chapel environment. We've got it near artwork suggesting stained glass windows, and I think it works very, very well.
These particular three are studies of what came afterwards as a large series of very large paintings. There were about 8 of those, but I had to do these small painting studies before I could get any larger, or have the confidence and know what it was I wanted to say. But I think I felt so much pain that my father died, and I knew he had had a lot of pain in his own life. And there was a lot of lack of fulfillment. And I thought, well, what can I do to help me and to help him? And it was quite cathartic. So I could go through if I could put in an image form what he couldn't achieve in his own life. And a lot of it was, he would have loved fame. He loved history. He would have loved to have made it some way, giving that knowledge that he acquired. He had an incredible old medieval history. And one of the pieces, my main piece, of the studies, is like a triptych. So I had this vision. It would be great. It would be a painting that would be so overwhelming and giving. My father is in this triptych. It's like a relief, a semi-relief in paint. The paint's very thick. So it's this look, he's there, he's dead. He loved all these, what do you call these, not effigies. I thought if I could give him that in the painting. And then this thing about loving women and loving being this centre of importance. And he felt invisible in his life. So I could put all of that, like a whole soup of his interests in one. And it was just a recurring theme that I tried. And also it feels over time, that's how I work. There's a very strong feeling inside. So the only way to get that feeling out is repeat and repeat and repeat. something you can say visually, but you can't express. There aren't really words. So how do you put? And if there were words, then I would possibly turn my hand to write. This one I called He Died in Europe, and there's that feeling that here he is, sort of shroud-like. He was from Breslau, in a big town, big city. It was a very urban lifestyle he had in Germany, and suddenly he's in a farm in round Lichfield. His experiences were so horrendous, and the thought that you can leave your parents, that you might not see them again, that everything that was familiar, from the language, the culture, everything, was no longer available to you. And there was nowhere to talk about it, and you had to internalise it and just carry on as if nothing had happened.